Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
Why did they bother inviting me just to leave me out like this? My name is Ryan. I'm 34 years old. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and up until that night I still thought my wife's family at least pretended to tolerate me. But that dinner? That changed everything. It was a Thursday evening. I remember that because I had skipped a late client call just to make it. Fancy steakhouse downtown. The Elcott, one of those places with valet-only parking and waiters in black ties. Melissa, my wife, had mentioned the family wanted to get together, and while she didn't exactly ask me to come, she said it like it was expected. I showed up in a navy jacket and pressed shirt, the kind of outfit I knew Cynthia, my mother-in-law, wouldn't sneer at right away. The host looked up from the reservation book when I gave him my name. "Ryan Bennett," I said, expecting a nod and a polite gesture toward a table. Instead, I got a furrowed brow. "Sorry, sir. I don't see a reservation under that name." "Maybe under Whitmore?" I said. That's my father-in-law's last name. "I'm supposed to be meeting them here." He scanned the page again. "Ah, yes. Table for 6 under a Mr. Peter Whitmore. They're already seated." "Already seated?" That gave me pause. I followed the direction of his nod, and sure enough, there they were, at a half-moon booth along the far window. Melissa, her parents, and her 2 sisters. All dressed to the nines, sipping wine, menus open, laughing like a magazine ad for family bliss. "Ryan," came a voice behind me. I turned. Cynthia, standing right behind me like she'd been waiting to watch this unfold. She looked me up and down like she was surprised I'd found the front door on my own. "Oh, Ryan," she said, feigning surprise. "You didn't think you were actually invited, did you?" My first instinct was to laugh it off, like maybe she was joking, but the tight-lipped smirk on her face told me otherwise. Her voice was low, smug, polished. Behind her, Melissa still hadn't looked up. She just kept stirring her drink like nothing was happening. Her sisters? They saw me, I know they did, but they both buried their smiles behind their wine glasses. I stood there like an idiot, just standing. The waiter behind the podium started shifting his weight from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable. Cynthia leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "This place is a bit out of your league. There's a sports bar down the block. Maybe you'd be more comfortable there." I swallowed hard. I'd put up with Cynthia's crap before. God knows I'd endured enough smug jabs, snide comments, and fake pleasantries to write a novel. But this was different. This wasn't a mistake. This was a performance, a deliberate snub, played out in front of an audience. And that's when I remembered something. A name, a connection, one they clearly didn't know I had, one that changed everything. Cynthia tilted her head at me like I was a curious stain she couldn't quite place. "You look confused, Ryan," she said, her voice sugary and cruel. "Honestly, I thought Melissa would have told you." Behind her, I saw Melissa finally glance up, but she didn't meet my eyes. She just looked at her wine glass like it held all the answers. Her sisters, Lindsay and Tara, had gone from hiding their laughter to outright giggling now. Tara covered her mouth like she was trying to be polite. Lindsay didn't bother. I still hadn't moved. My hand was clenched around the back of the host's podium like I needed it to stay upright. Cynthia sighed dramatically. "You really should have known this wasn't your kind of dinner. We're celebrating a little family milestone tonight, private thing, intimate." "I'm family," I said, the words sounding stupid the second they left my mouth. Her smile turned vicious. "By marriage. Don't flatter yourself." The host, some poor kid who looked like he wished he could melt through the floor, cleared his throat. "Would you like me to see if there's a spot at the bar, sir?" Cynthia waved him off. "That won't be necessary. I think Ryan knows where to go." She leaned in again, her perfume thick and expensive. "Like I said, there's a bar down the block. Big screens, beer specials, more your scene." That was the moment. The split second where I felt something shift in me. Not rage, not even hurt. Just this hard, cold clarity. I had swallowed her condescension more times than I could count. At holidays, at birthdays, even on my own damn wedding day when she said, "You clean up better than I expected." I'd laughed it off, smiled through it. But tonight I saw what this was. This wasn't passive-aggressive, this was intentional. They invited me so they could humiliate me. And Melissa? She was just going to let it happen. I glanced back at the host. "Actually," I said, brushing off my jacket, "could you do me a favor?" He blinked. Sure. Could you ask Marcus Bell to come out here? Cynthia scoffed. Marcus Bell? What, the owner? I nodded. Tell him Ryan Bennett's out front. He'll know who I am. The host looked between us, clearly not sure if I was joking. Cynthia crossed her arms. Are you serious right now? I looked at her, really looked at her, that perfect hair, that too white smile, the eyes that always scanned for weakness. I'm just getting started, I said. She gave a brittle laugh. You think you're going to bluff your way into this dinner? Do you know who eats here? Do you know what this place is? I helped build it, I said, still calm. Long before you ever heard of it. That caught her off guard. Her smile wavered. Melissa still hadn't said a word. She was stirring her drink again like her life depended on it. Marcus and I go back, I continued. We opened his first place together in Hyde Park. I ran the bar. He'll remember. Cynthia's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. The host returned a minute later, wide-eyed. Mr. Bell is on his way out. Cynthia's arms slowly dropped to her sides. Wait, she said, turning toward Melissa. What the hell is he talking about? Melissa didn't answer. She didn't even look up. But I did. And I smiled, because the best part was coming. Cynthia was still trying to figure out whether this was a bluff when the double doors swung open. Out stepped Marcus Bell. Mid-50s, gray at the temples, still built like he could toss a keg over one shoulder. His eyes scanned the lobby, and the second they landed on me, his whole face lit up. Ryan Bennett, he said, loud and grinning like I was the best part of his day. Man, it's been too long. He strode over and wrapped me in a hug that was half backslap, half bear squeeze. Marcus, I said, letting the surprise show just enough. Didn't expect to see you yourself. For you? Hell yeah. He pulled back, grinning. Last time I saw you, we were up to our ears in construction dust and arguing over cocktail menus. Yeah, and I was right, I said, smirking. You were, he admitted. Best-selling drink 3 years straight. Ask anyone. Behind me, the host was frozen in place. Cynthia was stock still, staring like she couldn't believe what was happening. I glanced over her shoulder and saw Melissa finally looking up from the table. No more wine stirring, no more pretending I didn't exist. Her mouth was slightly open, like she was watching a car crash and couldn't look away. Marcus turned to the host. Get this man whatever he wants. Table, drink, entire damn menu if he's hungry. Cynthia's face twitched. Wait a minute. Marcus looked at her for the first time like she'd just appeared. I'm sorry. Were you with Ryan? She's my mother-in-law, I said before she could speak. Ah, Marcus said, smiling like he knew exactly what that meant. I booked a table under my husband's name, Cynthia said, trying to recover. Family dinner. We weren't expecting... Marcus cut her off. Well, you've got a table, and now Ryan's joining you. Her eyes went wide. Excuse me? I won't have him standing around out here like he's not welcome. Not in my house. I bit back a grin. Cynthia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. But we're full. I'll have another chair brought over, Marcus said. Or hell, I'll bump the booth next to you. Ryan gets a seat. Non-negotiable. She opened her mouth again, then shut it. Marcus turned back to me. Come on, I want to introduce you to a few folks. Got some new hires from the Anderson deal. You remember that little wine spot we tried in Chicago? That model's working here now. Glad to hear it. He leaned in slightly. You ever get the itch to jump back into the game? You've always got a place with me. I smiled. Appreciate that. We talked for another minute, just long enough for everyone at that table to hear phrases like, launched 3 spots together, you saved my ass more than once, and this man's basically family. Then Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. I'll let you get settled. Enjoy dinner. As he walked away, the host turned to me, visibly rattled. Mr. Bennett, would you like me to show you to the table? Cynthia looked ready to faint. I shrugged like I had all the time in the world. Sure, let's go say hi. We walked past the hostess stand and toward their table. Melissa's eyes locked on mine for the briefest second. No smile, no apology, just guilt. As I reached the table, one of the sisters, Tara, started to speak but thought better of it. Melissa scooted over to make space. Lindsay gave me a look that was half curiosity, half fear. Cynthia was last to sit. She dropped into her seat like someone had cut her strings. I sat down slowly, napkin on my lap, back straight, calm and collected. And for the first time that night, I wasn't just Melissa's husband. I was the man with power. the one they hadn't counted on. And now? Now the game had changed. Marcus hadn't even made it all the way back to the kitchen before the waitstaff was scrambling to adjust the table. One brought over an extra chair. Another brought a new place setting and unfolded a napkin with a flourish like I was royalty. It was all deliberate. Marcus had made sure of that. And it killed Cynthia. I watched her flinch every time someone called me Mr. Bennett. Melissa moved her purse so I could sit next to her. She still hadn't said a word. As soon as I sat down, the waiter reappeared. "Would you like to see the wine list, sir?" Cynthia, already mid-sip, choked slightly on her drink. "Yes," I said casually. "Bring me the limited reserve page. Marcus and I go way back. He always keeps a bottle or two off menu for me." The waiter nodded and practically bowed before walking off. Cynthia tried to recover. She plastered on a smile so tight it looked painful. "Well," she said, lifting her glass a little too high, "isn't this a surprise?" "Sure is," I said, matching her tone. "Melissa didn't mention this was a private party." "She didn't think you'd be interested," Cynthia said, smooth as oil. "This place is, well, it's not for everyone." Melissa still didn't say anything. She just stared at the tablecloth like she was counting the threads. Tara cleared her throat, trying to break the tension. "So, Ryan, you and Marcus really know each other that well?" "I bartended his first place when it opened," I said. "Helped train half the staff. When he got serious about expanding, I helped him write the original investment proposal that brought in his early partners." Lindsay blinked. "Wait, so you're in the business?" "I was," I said. "Still do consulting sometimes. Actually, I helped him secure the permit for this very building." Cynthia couldn't help herself. "Well, bartending and consulting are different things." I turned to her, smiling. "You're right. Which is why I charged him a 5-figure fee for that permit work." She froze. Melissa's glass clinked slightly as she set it down. "And I didn't even bill him for the introductions I made," I added. "That'd be tacky." Cynthia tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Well, some people just happen to know the right people." "Oh, I didn't just happen," I said, tilting my head. "I worked my ass off for every connection I've got. Not everyone's born into a Rolodex." She narrowed her eyes. "And some of us understand the importance of legacy." "Sure," I said, keeping my voice even. "But it helps to check where that legacy's funding comes from." Melissa flinched, just barely. Tara looked confused. "What do you mean?" I sipped my water before answering. "Cynthia, do you remember when your son-in-law needed that capital infusion for his software startup a few years ago?" She stiffened. "That's not relevant." "It is if I'm the one who wrote the check," I said, folding my napkin. Peter was 2 weeks from defaulting on his bridge loan. I stepped in, quietly. No parade. Tara and Lindsay both turned to look at their mother. Cynthia's face tightened. "That's ancient history." "Funny," I said, "because he's still sending me quarterly updates on my stake." Melissa looked at me then, just briefly. Her eyes were wide, not angry, not scared, just realizing. The silence at the table stretched too long. "Anyway," I said, leaning back, "I'm just glad to be here. Family dinners are so important." The waiter returned with the wine, a rare Bordeaux that Marcus used to keep locked in the back, and began pouring. Cynthia looked like she might throw her glass at the wall. She muttered under her breath. "Service industry types shouldn't—" I cut in gently. "Cynthia, you might want to double-check who makes nights like these happen. People like me are the service industry." She didn't respond, just clamped her mouth shut and stared straight ahead. Melissa looked down again, but her ears were red. She had spent years underestimating me. Years of letting her mother call the shots, of assuming I'd just sit there and take it. That was over now, because tonight Cynthia wasn't in control anymore. I was. I let the silence breathe for a moment. You could feel the tension settle across the table like a heavy fog. Melissa still hadn't said a word, but now her wine sat untouched. Tara and Lindsay were glancing between me and their mother, unsure of whose side they were supposed to be on. Cynthia? She was gripping her fork like it had personally offended her. I looked over at her and smiled. Not smug, not mocking. Just honest. "You know, Cynthia," I said, gently placing my napkin on the table, "I've never brought any of this up, not once. Not the investments, not the favors, not the financial hand-holding." She gave a tight smile. "And yet here we are." "Yeah," I said, "here we are." I leaned forward slightly. I think it's time everyone heard a few things. Cynthia rolled her eyes like she was bored already. Melissa didn't object. She just sat there, still, frozen. I didn't marry into wealth, I said. I married into your family. That's the same thing, Cynthia muttered. No, I said sharply. It's not. Because what none of you ever seem to understand is that I worked for every single thing I have. Tara shifted in her seat. We know you have a business. No, I cut in. You think I run some average bar or flip drinks for tips. But the truth is, I built my first business from a rented storage space and $3,000 saved from construction jobs. I've invested in 5 startups, sold 2. I bought my first property at 29. Everything I own, I built from the ground up. Cynthia scoffed. And you think that makes you special? No, I said. It makes me real. I turned to Melissa. Do you remember the boutique you wanted to open in Over the Rhine? You were terrified of getting denied the SBA loan. She gave the faintest nod. You never got that loan, I said quietly. Because you didn't need it. I fronted the money, every penny, and I told you to tell people you got it from a private lender, so you could feel like you did it on your own. Tara's mouth dropped open. I helped her design the business plan, I continued, met with her contractor, reviewed every lease agreement, but I never asked for credit, because it wasn't about me. I turned back to Cynthia. Same with your husband's investment firm. He was drowning, you know it, and I didn't make a show of it. I wrote the check, I got him through the quarter, and I stayed quiet. Cynthia was shaking her head. That's not... And I paid for Lindsay's tuition gap when she lost that scholarship her sophomore year, I added. Remember the anonymous donor you all thanked in the family group chat? Melissa looked up now, eyes wide. That was you? I nodded. Even Marcus, who had come back to check in, lingering near the bar, chimed in from across the room. Ryan here kept our payroll afloat when we had the supplier delay last year. If it weren't for him, I would have missed checks. The whole table went quiet again. You all talk about me like I'm lucky to be here, I said. Like I somehow tricked Melissa into elevating her life. But you've got it backwards. Cynthia opened her mouth, but for once, nothing came out. I didn't marry up. You all married into my future. And I've carried this family financially from behind the curtain for years, without asking for applause, without making it about me. I looked around the table, locking eyes with each of them. But I'm done being quiet. I'm done pretending I'm just the guy who got lucky. Because I'm not some background character in your little dinner party. I picked up my glass. I'm the reason this dinner happened at all. They didn't have a response. None of them. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the outsider at the table. I felt like the one holding the damn table up. Cynthia wasn't done yet. I could see it in the way she sat up straighter, gathering what little pride she had left. She adjusted her scarf like she was preparing for battle, then leaned forward, her voice cutting through the silence. If all that's true, she said slowly, if you've done so much, then why are you living so well? Melissa supports you, doesn't she? Melissa didn't flinch. But I heard the quiet gasp from Tara. Even Lindsay blinked in disbelief. Cynthia folded her hands together like a prosecutor making her final point. You dress nice now, drive a new car, always seem to have time on your hands. Seems like my daughter's hard work is the reason you're living in comfort. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. You really believe that? I said, pushing my chair back just enough to turn and face Melissa directly. She stiffened. Want to tell them where the down payment came from? I asked her, calm but clear. She didn't answer. Melissa, I said again, a little firmer. Tell your mother where the money came from. Still nothing. All right, I said, exhaling. Guess I'll do it. I looked back at Cynthia. Every dollar from that house came out of my early trade earnings. I put 20% down before Melissa's business even had its first customer. She didn't tell you because she wanted to seem independent. And I let her. Because I loved her. Melissa looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. But if you're going to sit here and rewrite history, let's set the record straight. I invested in her brand. I paid for the storefront build-out. I signed the lease under my LLC so she could qualify. Tara whispered something under her breath. Lindsay's eyes went wide. And all of that, I said, I did without ever throwing it in your faces. Until now. Cynthia sat back like I'd slapped her. She tried to recover. Of course she did. Well, money isn't everything. What matters is who shows up, who holds this family together. You mean you? I asked. She didn't answer. You humiliated me tonight, I said, the calm gone now. You staged this little dinner to make a point, but it backfired. Melissa finally spoke. Her voice was low, barely audible. I didn't think she'd actually exclude you. I turned to her. So you knew. I thought she'd cool off, she said, not meeting my eyes. She told me you wouldn't enjoy it anyway, that it was more for the girls. Right, I said bitterly. Because nothing says sisterly bonding like stabbing your husband in the back with a linen napkin. No one spoke. The wine at the table had stopped flowing. The plates were untouched. The mood had shifted entirely. This dinner wasn't about food, I said, standing. It was about clarity. Melissa looked up at me finally. I held her gaze. Not angry. Just tired. I'd already decided to walk, I said softly. This dinner just confirmed it. What does that mean? Cynthia asked, her voice suddenly unsteady. It means, I said, turning to her, this little show you put on? It wasn't the beginning of something. It was the end. Melissa's eyes went glassy. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to scream, but I'm done. You're bluffing, Cynthia spat. No, I said, I'm free. And then I looked around the table one last time. I gave all of you chances, and all you did was prove I was right to leave. Then I walked out. No drama, no raised voice, just truth. Behind me, the table stayed quiet. Because they knew. They hadn't just pushed me too far. They'd lost the one person who ever gave them more than they deserved. The drive home was silent. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't check my phone. I just kept my hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. It was done. Really done. Back at the house, I parked in the driveway instead of the garage. A small, deliberate choice, like I wasn't planning to stay long. Inside, the place was quiet. Still smelled like the lavender diffuser Melissa loved to leave running in the hallway. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I walked straight to the office. We had a small safe tucked inside the bottom drawer of the file cabinet. I entered the code and pulled it open. Inside, contracts, bank records, stock certificates, investment ledgers from Melissa's boutique. Her business was registered under her name. That was what she'd wanted. But I had structured the funding as equity, 60% of it. I took out the folder, laid it on the desk, and started snapping photos. Every document, every transfer, every signed agreement. I uploaded the whole batch to the cloud, then backed it up to an external drive. I wasn't leaving anything behind. Then I pulled a suitcase from the closet, the gray one I only ever used for business trips. I packed deliberately, without emotion. A few changes of clothes, my laptop, my watch, my passport, the charger she always borrowed but never returned. I left the closet half full on purpose. I wasn't sneaking away. I was walking out. I placed the suitcase by the door and sat on the couch to wait. It was almost 10:30 when I heard the key turn. Melissa stepped inside, heels clicking softly against the tile. She didn't see me at first. She dropped her bag on the entry table and kicked off her shoes like everything was normal. Like tonight hadn't just detonated whatever was left of our marriage. When she turned and saw me sitting there in the dark, she jumped. Jesus, Ryan. I didn't move. Hey. She paused, looking at the suitcase. What are you doing? I stood up slowly. I'm leaving. Melissa's eyes flicked to the bag, then to me. You're serious. I was serious when I said it at dinner. I thought you were just mad, that you needed to cool off. I shook my head. Melissa, I've been cooling off for 5 years. She folded her arms, trying to stay composed. So what, that's it? You're just walking out after one bad dinner? I laughed under my breath. One bad dinner? You sat there and watched your mother mock me to my face, and you said nothing. You let her exclude me from a dinner I paid for half of, in a restaurant I helped build. Do you even hear yourself? She told me you weren't going to come, she said defensively. She said it was just for the girls. I didn't know. Stop, I cut in. You knew exactly what kind of woman your mother is, and you let her set the stage. Melissa looked down. So now what? You just leave? I picked up the suitcase. I already have. She stared at me for a long moment. You're going to regret this. No, I said calmly. You are, she scoffed. You think you're going to be fine without me? I set the suitcase by the door and pulled one last document from my inside pocket, a clean, signed summary of ownership for her boutique. I own 60%, I said, holding it up. Her face went blank. What? You asked for a loan. I gave you equity. You signed it, twice. You never read the fine print because you trusted me, and I never used it against you. Until now. She stepped forward. Ryan, I'm not taking your business, I said. I'm just not going to protect it anymore. You wanted to play separate? Fine, we're separate. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. I opened the door. Goodbye, Melissa. And I stepped out. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't need to. I had taken the only thing they never thought I would. My control. The morning after I left, I expected silence. What I got was chaos. By the time I finished my coffee, my phone had 17 missed calls. 5 from Melissa, 8 from her mother. The rest from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably her sisters using burner phones or Cynthia roping in some family friends to talk sense into me. I didn't answer any of them. Then came the text messages. Melissa was first. Melissa, we need to talk. Please, Melissa. I told my mom you were bluffing. Tell me you're not doing this. Melissa, you can't do this. You don't even care about the boutique. Then Cynthia, who went straight for the throat. Cynthia, you are a disgrace. You embarrass my family. You won't get away with this. I laughed out loud at that one. An hour later, her lawyer called. Or tried to. I recognized the firm name on the caller ID. Big downtown office. Mostly known for trust fund kids suing their roommates over loud music and dogs that shed. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted my own attorney. A friend I'd helped years ago during a bad property dispute. Me. Time to activate the exit plan. Boutique ownership clause is now live. His reply came instantly. Attorney. Already drafting the memo. Let them swing first. That was the thing Cynthia never understood. She thought wealth was about flash. Fancy last names, big houses, invitations to events no one actually enjoyed. But I'd made my career being quiet about money. Smart with contracts. Unassuming. Which meant they never saw this coming. By noon, Melissa was trying a new angle. Guilt. Melissa. My employees are scared. They're asking if the store's closing. Don't punish them for our issues. Melissa. I never thought you'd turn into this version of yourself. Melissa. You promised me forever. And I had, back when forever meant something. That afternoon, Cynthia showed up at the boutique and tried to assure the staff everything was under control. She didn't realize one of the employees had already forwarded them. My signed document confirming majority ownership had shifted, and that I would be making operational decisions until further notice. Within hours, 2 of Melissa's most loyal staff resigned. By the end of the week, foot traffic at the boutique had dropped off. I wasn't sabotaging her. I didn't have to. Word spreads fast when people realize the golden girl everyone worshipped was built on someone else's foundation. Melissa tried one last card. Melissa, you don't want to go to court. Let's be adults. So I sent her a photo of the signed investor agreement, her signature right next to mine. The equity split circled in red. 60-40. No response. A day later, her lawyer finally got through to mine. Apparently they were looking to renegotiate the original agreement. My attorney didn't even bother drafting a reply. He just laughed and sent them a copy of the clause that stated ownership was non-revocable in the event of divorce. They were stunned, because they'd built their little world on assumptions. That I'd always be polite, always be dependable, always be manageable. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. A few days after that, I got a call from the leasing office downtown, the luxury condo building where Melissa and I had almost signed a lease 2 years ago. Back then, we walked away because Cynthia said it was too much space for a couple without kids. What they didn't know was that I bought it quietly last year, in my name. When I walked in with my suitcase, the front desk manager smiled. Mr. Bennett, your keys are ready. That evening, as I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, glass of bourbon in hand, I scrolled through one last voicemail from Cynthia. This isn't over, Ryan. You need us more than you think. I smiled to myself, because that was the real twist. They never realized I didn't need them at all. They needed me. And now, they were on their own. 1 month later, I was sitting on the balcony of my downtown penthouse, morning light bouncing off the skyline, wondering why I didn't do it sooner. The condo was peaceful. No passive-aggressive tension, no slammed doors, no cold silences dressed up as civility. Just quiet, just mine. I'd finalized the divorce the week before. Clean break, no alimony, no shared assets. My lawyer made sure the equity documents for the boutique were airtight. Melissa didn't even contest them in the end. I think she knew it'd be worse if she did. I left her the house, the furniture. Even the wedding china Cynthia had insisted on registering for to keep up appearances. I took my name off everything that wasn't worth the headache, and kept everything that was. My assets stayed intact, my business portfolio untouched, my dignity reinforced. A few days after the papers were signed, Marcus called. "You finally did it," he said, not even bothering to hide his satisfaction. "Did what?" "Cut loose the anchor. You know, I was always surprised you stayed with that family as long as you did." "You and me both," I said, laughing. He wasn't just calling to catch up. He had an offer, a new project, a high-end whiskey lounge in the heart of Nashville. He wanted a partner with real experience, real grit. "You helped build my first 3, he said. "Let's build you one now." I didn't even hesitate. "Send me the specs," I told him. "Let's make it happen." That same week, Cynthia tried calling again. I let it ring out, then blocked her number for good measure. She tried using her sister's phone the next day. Blocked that one too. I wasn't interested in hearing her backpedal or pretend to extend an olive branch soaked in vinegar. That bridge wasn't just burned. I bulldozed it and paved over the ashes. Then Melissa texted. "Melissa, can we talk? Just 3 words. No apology, no explanation, no context." I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then I locked my phone and slid it face down on the patio table. Some things didn't need a response. A week later, I got an alert from a finance monitoring service I still had tied to the boutique. A public notice. The business had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It didn't surprise me. Without my guidance, without the back-end structure I'd set up, the supplier contracts, the tax handling, the payroll automation, it was just a pretty space with a fragile brand. I didn't celebrate, but I did feel clear. I was finally out from under a family that never saw me for who I really was, free from the weight of trying to prove myself to people who only saw me as Melissa's nice, quiet husband, the one they could leave off group texts, the one who should wait in the car, no more. Now when I walked into a room, it was on my terms. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the man who built everything he had, and walked away when it no longer served him. The man who didn't beg to stay at the table when he could buy the building next door. The one who didn't need the approval of people who never earned his respect. And best of all, I didn't just escape their story. I'd started writing my own. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where the city felt half asleep. I was out on the balcony with a coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, skimming the news like I always did. That's when I saw it. Buried in the local business section of the Cincinnati Herald. Peter Whitmore steps down as managing partner of Whitmore Investments amid financial restructuring. I clicked faster than I meant to. The article was short. No drama. Just the usual vague corporate speak. Undisclosed financial difficulties. Reorganization strategy. Temporary leadership adjustment. But I knew better. I knew the exact loan that had come due. The one they'd refinanced 2 years ago. The one I had personally co-signed for and floated while Peter was juggling credit cards to keep the lights on. Without me, they couldn't make the payment. No more safety net, no more silent bailouts. And now, no more firm. I set the phone down, leaned back in my chair, and stared out over the skyline. The sun was climbing. A slight breeze passed over the balcony. Below, the world kept moving. But up here, poetic silence. They thought they could write me out of the story. Sideline me. Shrink me down to a footnote in Melissa's curated life. But they underestimated something important. I had the pen the whole time. I had written checks with no name on them. I'd signed contracts no one bothered to read. I'd sat through years of shallow smiles and fake gratitude, waiting, always waiting, for someone to actually see me. But they never did. So I stopped waiting and started rewriting. Not out of revenge, not even out of anger, out of self-respect. I didn't torch their world. I just stopped patching the holes they kept pretending weren't there. And when it all came crashing down, they finally understood what I was worth. Not because I told them, because I left. A vibration buzzed on the table. Another text from Melissa. Melissa, I didn't know he was stepping down. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled. No reply. She still didn't get it. This wasn't about staying connected or being kept in the loop. This was about the moment they closed the circle and forgot I was part of it. So I drew a new one. Wider, higher, mine. And that was the real legacy, not the money. Not the ownership, the freedom, the final word, mine.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.